Chapter 41 Ladies-in-Waiting and Waiting Ladies. Ariel. She'd looked forward to have Helena on Dragonstone. The castle seemed emptier without Fang or Bela, and amidst a string of unfair incidents, this was one of the few pleasant surprises. That's how Ariel felt personally, though she couldn't speak for Reyna. Helena made a poor substitute for her twin sister, but so would anyone. To her credit, Reyna never expressed any displeasure about it. Whilst the ship was being unloaded and Helena settled Dreamfire into her new nest, Ariel reached the castle ahead of them and was waiting in the main hall when the princess finally made it inside. However, seeing the bouncy ginger curls of Jacqueline Redwine walking in behind Helena had been a bummer. The Redwine teen looked so much like a Weasley, until those russet brown eyes landed on Ariel, and like clockwork they'd become cold and disdainful, a look more befitting of Malfoy than Ron. Jacqueline was a lip server, making snide remarks about Ariel one moment, only to use those same lips to smile winningly if Helena happened to glance in her direction. Though Helena was the one moving, it wasn't unexpected she'd bring along friends from court to continue serving as her ladies-in-waiting. But of everyone, why did it have to be Jacqueline? Why would she even agree? King's Landing offered a far more luxurious court than at Dragonstone. The Redwine girl didn't like Ariel. And Damon, who would become the Lord of Dragonstone after his marriage to Rhaenyra, had called Jacqueline a grape whose opinion didn't matter. To her face, it was a sort of slight any girl would be slow to forget. Regardless, Lady Jacqueline had been chosen as part of Helena's retinue, and she wasn't the only one. The younger princess might have been joining her sister's castle to settle alongside her future husband, but Helena certainly did not show up alone. She brought along a sizable household for the move, and Ariel glimpsed most as they arrived at the castle. 5 personal maids, 6 male servants, 4 dragon handlers, 11 horses, 4 stable hands, and 20 guards. Ariel didn't know the name of any of the staff except Diana, a 12-year-old girl who'd worked as one of Helena's chambermaids. Then aside from Jacqueline, Ariel also knew who the other 2 ladies-in-waiting were, Lady Rosie Risley and Lady Alisa Rain. Looks like Helena brought her our ladies, Ariel had joked to Jacqueline when they saw who'd been picked for the honor. They all happened to be from houses that started with the letter R: Risley, Rain, and Redwine. As daughters of powerful lords of the Reach and Westerlands, they came with servants and guards of their own too, adding about 30 additional people on top of Helena's retinue. It's made Ariel a little worried about the lodging Hagrid sorted out for Kennelmaster Corp and his family. Dragonstone was a grand castle, but not the biggest, and with such an influx of no permanent residents, the servant quarters would fill up. There had been extra space after Bella took her own household along when she married Aegon, but considering the situation, there was a chance those people might come back. It all depended on Aegon, and whether Bella was about to become a 12-year-old widow. It was late by the time Helena finally made it inside, so after an informal welcome dinner, they were sent to bed. The following day, Helena was kept busy settling in and familiarizing herself with her new home. Ariel would have liked to help and see how she was handling the move. She'd arrived at Dragonstone a week earlier than most had expected her, and she was also being made to leave the only home she'd ever known at the same time her brother was horribly injured. There was a lot she wished to speak to Helena about that morning, but there was a slight obstacle to overcome first, and her name was Septa Mega.
You've hardly attended lessons in moons, Ariel. Moons? When was the last time you practiced your music? Gods grant you patience, but you remain as hopeless in the art of instruments as a baby bird is at flying. You need those lessons, Ariel.
Up until a week ago, the woman had been solely focused on Bella's wedding. All of Septa Mega's energy had gone into preparing Bella, that for a time Ariel, Rhaena, and Rhaenyra's sons were pushed to the sideline while the woman attempted to fit years of lessons into 2 months. Ariel had still participated in some of those lessons, and every single one where they worked on sewing Bella's wedding gown. That was still less hours of tutoring per week than she'd grown accustomed to, and Ariel had enjoyed the freedom of choice of her sudden spare time. Now that Bella was gone, the Septa started remembering the rest of her pupils.
Why?
Ariel groaned. Septa Mega was charged with the cultural and spiritual education for the kids in the castle. In other words, she prepared them for marriage. Ariel didn't mind the sewing. She'd never love it, but it was a useful skill. and the sessions themselves felt less like work and more like getting together with friends to gossip while doing a hobby together. It could be quite satisfying to make something nice that was later put to good use too. It was different than using her magic to tweak her garments, where the charms were quick and would eventually run out. Making clothes the Muggle way had a permanence and sturdiness which shallow glamours lacked. The history and poem sessions were fine. The dancing could be fun. To be fair, the woman had a patience and understanding for her foreignness which Maester Geraldis lacked in his lessons. Harold didn't mind those parts, but then there was also the constant praying to gods she didn't believe in, the instrument lessons and the endless nuances of courtesies. What use would they serve at Cracklaw anyway? I am betrothed now. Wasn't that the point of your tutelage? Doesn't that mean your duty is completed? It was said lightly, as a bit of a joke, yet Hariel felt there was some truth to it too. Her betrothal meant she kind of graduated from the course Septimega was teaching, which was sort of a masterclass on how to prosper at court, and thereby make a good marriage. Admittedly, Bela's betrothal didn't stop her lessons, but Bela was a child while Hariel was of age. Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. That alone tells me how much work I've got left with you, said the Maga castigated, reaching over and pinching her ear. What do you take me for? I am a scepter of the faith, not some traveling troop instructor. I do not teach mummers to play at being brides. You have never known a mother's guidance, and though Lord Rubius doesn't lack for love or patience with you, he is woefully inadequate at raising girls. It leaves the responsibility at my feet, and I will not rest until you can handle yourself as is befitting of the lady wife of a prince. Willowy, thin, and head shorter than Hariel herself, the Scepter pulled her along by the ear towards the lesson chamber. They passed the serving boy, and seeing she put her foot in her mouth with the scepter again, the guy failed to hide his grin. After the initial pinch, it wasn't truly painful anymore, though the woman kept her hold as a threat of more to come if she didn't oblige. If your honorable betrothal isn't a sign of favor from the Seven, I don't know what is. Prince Aemond, bless the boy's ignorance, has not had to bear your many ludicrous antics on a daily basis yet. If he had, I'm not confident this betrothal would have gone through. Make no mistake, you have a lot left to learn. I will not be shamed by sending one of my girls to the altar as a beast puppeteering as a bride. Hariel didn't knock on Helena's door until the afternoon, but the girl who opened it wasn't the main occupant of the chambers. Lady Hariel Potter, Elisa Rain said, her grey-green eyes crinkling happily, and her smile was wide and showed a gap between her front teeth. The 13-year-old girl turned away from the door, speaking to the people inside. Helena, it's Potter. I heard. Don't keep her waiting at the door, Elisa. The girl flipped her thin auburn hair over her shoulder as she let Hariel in. Helena and Jacqueline had made themselves comfortable on the seating area by the fireplace. Pieces of parchment littered the table around the tea tray and cups, whilst over by the wardrobe the chambermaid Diana was sorting out the princess's clothes. None of that was unexpected, but Hariel was puzzled by the cats. So many cats. There was a black cat sitting in the window watching for seagulls, a white one by the fireplace, a brown and spotted one looking at her with bright yellow eyes, a naked cat dressed up in a knitted sweater, and more still. Yet Helena didn't own any cats. Oh, you've decorated. Hariel looked curiously around, taking in the alterations done to the chamber. The numerous cats aside, the differences of the room were mostly due to the new furnitures and Helena's interior preferences. There was not a lack for fine furniture at Dragonstone, but Helena was more comfortable decorating her chamber with her own things, and she had brought along everything from her solar bench to her 4-poster bed. This is coming together quickly. How are you settling in, Helena? Quite well, Hariel. I spent the morning with Rhaenyra and my nephews for tea and cake. As you can see, the servants finally brought my bed up from the ship too, and I hope to have my wardrobe sorted out today. We're all pleased to have you here with us, though I didn't think to expect you so soon, with so much to pack and ship over. Aye, we went ahead with the essentials only, and it'll be another ship arriving in the next few days with the rest of our belongings, Helena said. Do you want some tea, Hariel? Yes, please. Serving herself, Ariel reached for the teapot and she noticed there wasn't a cup for her here. There was a stack of them over by the corner cabinet, left waiting to be tidied away by Diana once she finished organizing Helena's wardrobe. Ariel pointed her wand. Accio teacup. The top cup lurched up and soared across the room like a snitch, and Ariel caught it nimbly out of the air. The magic display left all the eyes in the room strained on her, the 4 humans and numerous cats alike. Ignoring the reactions the best she could, Ariel carefully cleared away some of the parchments sprawled across the table to make space for her teacup. Ariel recognized Helena's work at a glance. They were information sheets about insects, made with pristine handwriting and small illustrations of the species in the text. Ariel saw one about spiders, another about grasshoppers, a type of worm, a firefly and a moth. Helena was gathering enough of these she could genuinely make a book of them. Ariel made her tea, whilst reminding herself it was rude to exclude Helena's friends. She didn't feel like she owed Jacqueline her courtesies. She'd not forgotten her mean opinions about Ariel's scar while gossiping with the daughter of the Master of Laws, nor how the red wine blushed around the aimant. But Elisa had never done anything. "What about you two?" Ariel asked, nodding more to Elisa than Jacqueline. She'd be polite, but she wouldn't feign any great affection either. "Is Dragonstone to your liking, ladies?" "We're settling in fine," Lady Elisa Rain answered as she scooped up a fat, pearly white cat from the bench, sat down and put the cat in her lap for petting. "Dragonstone is very different from the Red Keep. Different from my own home of Castamere in the west too. It's unlike any castle I've seen, and I was a little intimidated when we walked up from the docks. This is a mystical castle, but it's also smaller. And the sounds. I listened to the rumbling echoes all night." "It takes some getting used to," Ariel agreed. "Aside from that, one of my clumsy servants dropped my table on the stairs, which leaves my chamber without an adequate seating until the leg is mended, but otherwise we're settling in fine." "If you wish, I can fix that easily enough," Ariel remarked, sitting down in the available chair furthest from the fire. "I know a spell, and it should be as good as new." Elisa was taken aback by the offer. Ariel recognized the signs of someone who didn't know what to make of magic. The girl glanced uncertainly to Helena, as if expecting the princess might intervene. She didn't. "Don't trouble yourself. It's but a table, and I wouldn't want to bother you." "It wouldn't be a bother," Ariel chuckled. "It's about as hard as... Well, you know you need to practice getting on and off your horse, but then it gets easier the more you practice. It's akin to that. As I've already learned a spell years ago, it doesn't take me that much effort to do it." One of the cats came sneaking out from underneath Helena's bed, lurking forwards on soundless paws to sniff Ariel's leg. It was the hairless one, with grey and white skin and dressed in a red knitted sweater. Who do all these cats belong to? She wondered. The last Ariel checked, which was a week ago, the princess didn't own any cats. "Elisa," Helena and Jacqueline said simultaneously. The Rain Girl smiled bashfully. The naked cat nibbled on the end of her gown, then licked it for a taste. "All of them?" "They are indeed. The one by your leg is Maester Meow," Elisa Rain said. "And the cat in my lap is Catamere." "Catamere," Ariel chuckled. "As in Castamere." "Exactly! I've got 7 cats with me. I have more at home, but I couldn't pack them all with me, could I?" Elisa laughed and then set to introducing all the cats. Offers of magic and help had only made her wary, but once Elisa started talking about her pets, she turned so bubbly and friendly one could be fooled to think they were the best of friends. "There's Lord Commander Whiskers and Football sleeping over there in the corner, and Pawpaw's by the door. I can't see them, but I believe Lamprey Pie and Meraxes are behind the curtains. They hate sailing and were stuck inside the cabinet with Rosie throughout the whole voyage. She sneezed so much and it frightened my little dears. They'll live with me in my rooms, but today I just couldn't bear leaving them alone after such a hard journey." Elisa's colorful collection of cat names went in one ear and out the other. By the end, the only thing Ariel knew for sure was that the girl had 7 cats, and talked about each of them with the adoration of a proud mother. Ariel sipped her tea and wondered how Eliza Rain could be at court for nearly 2 years as one of Helena's companions, without a single one of her 7 cats being harmed. But when Ariel happened to bring her dog along for a weekend, Fang was murdered. Did they expect Ariel not to take that personally? Ariel startled as the naked cat, Mr. Meow wasn't it, suddenly leapt up her skirt and onto her lap. With large pointed ears, furless and a wrinkled face, the cat was not a creature most would call cute. But after staring at each other for several seconds, Ariel tried petting him. She was prepared to stroke wrinkled, dry skin, but the cat was unexpectedly soft, with fine hair so short they were basically invisible, more like touching a warm peach. The cat purred and settled into her lap. "Aw, Mr. Meow, are you making friends?" Eliza said, speaking in a baby-like voice to her cat. "Such a charmer you are! Yes you are! Yes you are!" "Where's Lady Rosalie Risley?" Ariel asked. Rosie was 19 years old, with straight brown hair and dark eyes, and probably the girl Ariel liked best amongst Helena's friends. At least she'd never snickered at how Ariel pronounced her name the way Jacqueline did now. It wasn't Ariel's fault she struggled to roll her R's the way the natives did, or that saying Rosie Risley highlighted that. Jacqueline covered her laugh behind a hand, and Ariel pretended she didn't care. "She wasn't at dinner yesterday either. Is she unwell?" "She is," Helena confirmed. "A sudden cold came over Rosie soon after we set sail," Eliza explained. "She remained inside the cabin the whole voyage, red-nosed and puffy-eyed, and she couldn't stop sneezing. She's on bed rest now, but I heard she felt better today." "It's but a passing cold then." "We pray that's all it is," Jacqueline said. "What about you, Ariel? How have you been?" Helena asked, leaning forwards. "We buried Fang at the beach," Ariel said, thinking of the lone-marked grave he'd made for Fang. Norbert's blue fire had turned his body to ash, and he'd put him to rest together. Fang had been big, hard muscle, heavy and intimidating, yet soft and kind, without a mean bone in his gentle heart. All of him was gone now, his body reduced to rough and grainy dust except for a lone tooth, a small one situated so far back in Fang's mouth his torturer hadn't gotten around to pulling it out. Ariel hoped to put that tooth to good use, so that whoever took the rest of Fang's fangs would grow to regret that decision. Then, Hagrid has decided on a coat of arms too. He gave the design to Mr. Geraldis. He's making copies and will send duplications to King's Landing and Old Town for bookkeeping. What did he settle for? Helena wondered. Ariel put down her teacup and reached around Mr. Meow into the tie-on pocket of her gown, bringing out her notebook. It's a golden compass, starred over a wine-red oval on a black field, she said, showing them the drawing. It was based on a star on Hagrid's navigation compass, the one he'd used to find Ariel in the north, the one Ariel used to find Fang in that dungeon. It symbolized both as travelers, come from afar to settle in a foreign land. The wine-red oval behind it had started out as one of the previous ideas, a dragon egg. It had been allowed to stay since Hagrid had a knack for raising all sorts of creatures from an egg, be them dragons or giant spiders. The black background was mostly to fill out the banner. Only Dorn used round banners, and by adding the black backdrop it looked a little like a star in the night sky. And it just so happened that the night they arrived in Essos, in that fishing village years ago, there'd been a star shower across the night sky. The colors were hard but reminiscent of Gryffindor, and Heldry was supposed to be visible from afar, so the bolder the better. It was also possible to be depicted by anyone, no matter how artistically challenged they might be. Anyone with a straight ruler could draw Hagrid's coat of arms, and still get a somewhat accurate result. This is a fine coat of arms indeed, Helena declared. Fitting of House Hagrid. He'll be pleased to know you approve, Helena, Ariel said. Other than that, your sister and I flew out to Crackle yesterday. We visited House Bruno of Brownhollow and then the Point. Sorry, I should say the Dragon Point now, she corrected herself. It was very informative and I intend to visit House Bruno of Diarden next, but it would be better if Aemond came along for that. Ariel trailed off, mindlessly stroking Maester Meow behind the ear as the cat leant into her hand. How is Eamon faring? Did he by any chance think to send a letter with you? Helena bit her lip. No, but I didn't see my brother before I left. Eamon is in Old Town. Old Town? Why he'd be there? Durham was one thing, he squired in Old Town, but Eamon? What for? My brother settled Vermiford and left 4 days ago, and he had yet to return when I left for Dragonstone. Eamon may be back by now, it's not a social visit. Mother sent him to the Citadel in Old Town in pursuit of knowledge from the Order of Maesters. We hope to find knowledge there which may aid Aegon. The Citadel was where men could become Maesters by earning their chains of knowledge. Each link in their chain represented a subject they'd mastered. The more they learned, the longer the chain became. The institution might accept commoners into their ranks as well as High Lords and Royals. Just about anyone was allowed to learn in the Citadel. Granted, they were not women. Excluded from education based on their sex, no women were allowed to study there. Be it in healing, herblore, communication, economy, architecture, mystical arts, star navigation, seasonal calculations, and history. It made her irritated. Not because Hariel could claim any great calling to become a maester, but because it was unfair. Hariel had once been allowed to study, both in the Muggle world and the magical one, but that was not a given here. Hariel had been very fortunate with her Westerosi education, but she knew her situation was an exception to the rule. Men were already taller and bigger, and he told her that's why women had no place in the practice yards or handling weaponry. They were barred from sports, and the Citadel excluded them from knowledge, and politics were rigged to keep them out of influence. It left them precious few fields to excel in except motherhood, and the last few available were argued over like the last scraps of a juicy meat between 1,000 hungry crows. And it often felt like it was that way by design. It was for that reason Bella couldn't stand her own cousin. She viewed Helena as a competing crow who'd snatched her piece of meat, her only ticket to be more than a broodmare to an estranged cousin she neither liked or loved. Hale could think of others who'd have wished to learn from the Citadel too. Someone like Hermione would have been horrified. She'd sooner cut off her bushy brown hair, put on Ron's clothes, and declare herself Hermes Granger than accept a life without access to the library. If it had been possible, Hariel herself would have liked the chance to study the higher mysteries they taught there. But alas. Instead she was left hearing vague accounts about it from Maester Geraldis, who more often than not said, "That's not how magic works," regarding 90% of what Hariel and Hagrid got up to. Their unfair entrance requirements aside, the Citadel had been gathering knowledge for thousands of years, and that could not be dismissed. I've heard a lot about the text and knowledge of the Citadel. I do hope you'll find something there. She'd meant it kindly, but her words only made Helena's frown grow more pronounced. You don't? Ariel asked, not because she believed it, but because Helena's expression was troubled. I have hope too, but it starts and ends in hope. Accepting reality is another matter, Helena said. Aegon's fall cannot be undone. He will never fly again. Those who use their eyes before their hearts knows it to be true. Surely, there was a pressure on Hariel's chest, a sense of dread that made her throat go dry. She couldn't claim to have any great affection for Aegon, but she didn't want the prat dead either. Surely it's not a certainty, is it? There's hope he'll live. He's made it this far, has he not? And you said yesterday... You're right, Helena murmured, and reached out to Hariel's empty teacup, pulling it to her face for inspection. There's a chance he'll live, but if so, he might wish he hadn't. It was a blunt thing to hear, even harder when spoken with such confidence by Aegon's own sister. The room became uncomfortably silent. Hariel couldn't think of anything to say, and neither did Rain or Redwine. Are you reading my tea leaves? She asked at last, but Helena had become so focused on her divination, only a slight twist of her finger indicated she'd heard Hariel's question. I think Helena might wish some privacy, Eliza concluded, rising from her seat with her cat tucked close. Jacqueline, would you be a dear and help me with my cats? Ariel looked down at Maester Meow, curled in her lap. Do you want my help as well, Lady Eliza? I'd rather Ariel remain, Helena said. I am reading her cup. Is this the time? Jacqueline asked, disapproval clear in the tightness of her mouth. Whenever you do that teacup thing, or the dreams, neither has ever brought you any joy, Helena. Leave it be, Jacqueline, the princess said dismissively, not looking away from Ariel's cup. Eliza smiled nervously, and she moved to clear out. With the help of Jacqueline and Diana, Eliza managed to get all 7 cats out the door, though the red wine sent Ariel a hard look as she closed the door behind her. What does my cup show you? Helena tilted her head, trying to get a better angle. I can't tell. I fear I am trying to force a pattern that isn't there. How so? Ariel wondered. Because I want it to make sense, so I may understand what I see before it's too late to do anything, she said. Did you know that the days before Aegon's wedding, I had a dream my brother would fly? He was soaring through the air, but without Sunfire's wings to keep the ground at bay, and the bells were so loud in my ears. Ariel saw what she was getting at. You think it's connected to how Aegon fell from the belfry? Aye, and he broke, Helena said as a matter of fact. He was the break bell. Even though I tried to stop it. I wasn't sure what I was trying to stop, but I tried. I had hoped if I went looking for Bela, he would stay inside, but Mother sent him along with me. I tried to stop him from coming up the belfry too, but Aegon's never been agreeable when drunk. Helena sank into her seat and put the cup down. What do you dream of now? Ariel asked, not unkindly. For you to be searching for patterns in my teacup. Aegon's fall was almost a week ago, yet something must be bothering Helena to make her look so worried. Did she wish to see Aegon's future? To find out whether he'd have a future at all? But then why would reading Ariel's cup help with that? Aegon's fate shouldn't affect her own future too much. Right? I dream of you, in a fashion. Helena frowned. It's not truly you, and my dream doesn't always come while I'm asleep either. I see a raven, with feathers as black as your hair, and eyes as green as yours are. And for whatever reason, I always think that bird is you. In my dreams, the raven flies at night, low to the ground, and its dark plumage makes it almost invisible in the dark. It's chasing fireflies. Ariel folded her hands, listening as Helena shared the tale. The raven chases and eats some of the fireflies, but the rest scatters. In pursuit, the fireflies lead the raven to a dark river, where it thinks to quench its thirst by drinking from the dark river. Except it's not a river of water, but of blood. Was Helena certain this was an inner eye thing? Because to Ariel that sounded quite alike to most random nightmares. You don't believe me. Helena must have caught her thoughts on her face. It's not that simple, Ariel answered. I do believe you can see something. There are times you'll say and do things and it's like you know, but not always, as you've admitted yourself. Ariel didn't understand much of the prophetic stuff. It remained one of those branches of magic Ariel had endless time and opportunity to practice whenever she thought to drink a cup of tea or went to bed, yet somehow never made a sliver of improvements with. If Ariel possessed some sort of inner eye that was buried deep inside her, then it seemed to be as blind as a mole. Being blessed with good vision was the sort of sense you were either born with or not. No amount of practice could improve bad eyesight. Either someone needed reading glasses or they didn't. Staring at teacups wouldn't ever make it better. It wasn't because she doubted magic could do otherworldly things, not at all. She was a witch and was quick to believe in haunted bogs, ice dragons, and children of the forest. But in comparison, she found prophetic dreams so murky and wishy-washy. Not at all like true magic. Or at least it wasn't true magic accessible to Ariel herself. Ariel wouldn't openly dismiss Helena though. She knew others could have magic that differed from her own. She didn't have to look further than Hagrid to know that. There was something so magical about Hagrid that spells bounced off of him like his very skin was made of dragonhide armor. Even fire didn't burn Hagrid as quickly as it would everyone else. Only Norbert's blue fire was the sort that made Hagrid jump to avoid. It burned hotter than the rest, and only the dragons had teeth sharp enough to make him bleed. The Westerosi dragons had mind magics too, something beyond Norbert's ability, as Ariel's young firebreather was not of Westeros like the rest. The native dragons could communicate with their bonded riders through mind link that sometimes made Ariel envious, such as when that link made a cranky dragon like Vhagar fly from Dragonstone to King's Landing, after feeling Hagrid's distress, while Norbert remained none the wiser. And yet, Hale could observe that magic at work, the same way she'd seen ghosts and magical creatures at Hogwarts. Even if she couldn't do what they could do, Hale had still been able to judge the magic at work, as all of it had left their traces. That's not something she could do with other people's dreams. Vague prophetic musings which might mean this or might mean that, and they depended on dreamers placing questionable symbolic meanings behind stuff like ravens, fireflies, rivers, and the night. It was too vague. Ariel had yet to hear a single prophecy that had been confirmed to have happened. A clear prophecy that didn't entail 1,000 guesses and a lengthy stretch of the imagination to force the pieces to fit. These dragon dreams and divination sounded more like cloud watching than solid predictions. Anyone could see shapes in the clouds, but where one person saw a giraffe, another saw a sword. And neither was even real. It was an illusion, and their minds playing tricks when they tried to force purpose in random shape placements. The activity itself was fine, a fun game in many ways. But Ariel became skeptical whenever someone pointed at the random puffy whisks of white, gave it a murky meaning, and then called it a prophecy the few times one of their 100 different guesses was somewhat right. Well, Ariel could watch grey clouds rolling in over the ocean, and Helena might point towards them and say, "Do you see that cloud? That looks like it's a smiling old lady." But Ariel, whose inner eye was visually impaired, would likely answer, "To me it looks like it's going to rain." If it then started to rain an hour later, proving her forecast accurate, did that make Ariel a prophet too? Privately, Ariel thought something similar about Aegon's fall. Ariel wasn't sure she'd ever met Aegon at a time he wasn't holding some beer or wine. For years she'd been troubled by the risks he took each time the prince climbed drunk onto Sunfire's back. It wasn't uncommon for inebriated riders to fall off their horses after a feast, and at least for them the drop would be a lot shorter than from a dragon. In the end, Helena's prophecy didn't come to pass, since Aegon fell off a belfry instead of Sunfire. The people of the king's court were shocked such could befall a prince during his own wedding and worried for Aegon's health. But still, few except his mother had been truly surprised. He'd been daring fate for years, and perhaps the true magic involved with all this was that he hadn't fallen sooner. "What do you believe it to mean?" Ariel mused. As skeptical as she was, she also knew Helena believed. Ariel didn't dispute there's 7 gods who are one, or the nameless gods of the north, or that fire god in Essos, so why would she dispute her friend's belief now? She cast her mind around. What symbolic meaning did Helena put in ravens and fireflies? Did the princess suspect Ariel would start feasting on insects and wash it down with rivers of blood? It sounded like some of those exaggerated folktales of evil witches, who bathed in the blood of babes to keep their youth and all that nonsense. Fear-mongering lies told by timid men who didn't approve of powers they themselves couldn't control. "I hope to learn more from your cup." Helena held Ariel's teacup. "Maybe the portents of the leaves would add clarity to my dreams, but alas, I had hoped to see swarms." Ariel took the cup and inspected it herself. Her reading glasses remained in her bedchamber, so she had to hold out the cup as far away from her face as possible to make the little brown stuff look like more than dark blobs. "A swarm of what?" "Fireflies." No, Ariel still saw no swarms, just soggy tea leaves. "I see nothing of the sort." "Do you see the hand like I did?" She turned the cup this way and that and squinted until she found an angle that supported Helena's suggestion. "Might be a hand in there. It looks a bit mangled, so whoever owns that hand is probably hurt." "An injured hand?" Helena's eyes were bright. "Curious. Let's hope it's not your grandfather in that cup then, Ariel said. I looked at her apologetically. I'm afraid I'm not much help with this branch of magic, Princess. If you wish for a gown of starlight or a marble statue flown from the yard in through your terrace doors, I'm your witch. But the secrets of this teacup are no more discernible to me than the tongue of snakes is to you.
Snakes?
Helena asked, puzzled.
Don't you mean dragons?
I understand all snakes, but only some dragons, Ariel corrected. Your own Dreamfire is one of the dragons beyond my understanding. You once called her a solitary queen, and you spoke true. From what I hear, she doesn't even speak with the other dragons. If I may be so bold, I'd say you both have a confusing way about you. Though I have learned your language, your words puzzle me sometimes too. Helena's eyes narrowed. She didn't speak, but her expression had gone hard.
Had Ariel gone too far there?
Helena was her friend, but she was also a princess, born and raised with the expectations of grandeur that title entailed.
I beg your pardon, my princess, Ariel said quietly. I did not mean it in an ill way. I've come to think of your riddles as part of your charm, and I meant no offense.
Helena reached for her own cup, took a sip, and then she spoke, though it was almost despite herself.
Of late, you're not the only one to speak such of me. Aemond called me similar, and worse still.
Aemond? She blurted, disbelieving. Of those siblings, Helena and Aemond were the closest. Rhaenyra didn't get along with any of the other four. Aegon was Aegon, and Daeron had been away in Old Town, and so the two middle children were the ones who got along best. Why? When? You said he was in Old Town.
He is, but we parted ways on bad terms. Aemond and I had an argument before he left,
Helena admitted quietly.
How come? He has always had a temper, and Aegon's ailment isn't making it better. The morning Aemond left for Old Town, he asked me again about what happened at the tower. He wished for me to tell him in my own words without our king father and mother there to make judgments. I told him the same version again. Is that not the true version?
Helena fidgeted with her red dress, plucking a few cat hairs off the fabric.
Aye, it is. But Aemond doesn't believe you. And why was Ariel suddenly having doubts too? He does to some extent, but he believes I'm not being adequately forthcoming. He assumes I made light of Bella's behavior that night, that I'm protecting her for some unfathomable reason.
Helena wrinkled her nose as if a bad smell had wafted through the window.
Of anyone, Bella is not the one I tried to shield.
Ariel arched a brow, but Helena kept talking, showing a range of anger Ariel had rarely glimpsed.
Bella is envious of me and has never shied away from showing her dislike. I won't claim to hold any deep affection for my cousin either. I love her not. I tolerate Bella for the sake of our shared kin, but since my betrothal her behavior has been testing my patience. If Bella had pushed Aegon off that tower, I would have said it. I love my brother and I would not protect Bella over him, not for any of my family.
The blunt honesty put Ariel off guard, so much that Ariel only barely held back the
"But Bella is your family too,"
on her tongue. Who was Ariel to judge Helena for not getting along with her cousin, or the other way around? Ariel had loathed her cousin Dudley too.
I told Aemond as much, but he...
Helena dragged a hand through her hair.
He has his own ideas, and my version didn't fit with whatever he cooked up in his mind. Then one thing led to another.
Ariel was having a bad feeling about this. Aemond was as reasonable as a pissed-off chihuahua when he got angry, she knew well. But at least Ariel had a temper to match him. Yet Helena hated confrontation. That would have been hard for her.
What did he say?
The energy drained from Helena, as if the very thought of it left her numb, becoming small and lost in a way that had nothing to do with confusing dreams.
Things are changing for him. Our brother may die. Our mother stands vigil over Aegon day and night. We've scarcely seen her since the wedding. My mother bade me farewell by a letter instead of leaving his sickbed long enough to speak to me in person. And now I have moved away too. Amond must compensate for our abrupt absence, as well as being conflicted. Why is he conflicted? Helena twisted her hands, growing so uncomfortable she was struggling to talk. Her shoulders were raised and stiff, her eyes had fixed towards the floor. Harriel realized she'd been leaning closer and closer, getting too far into the princess's personal space. A sure way to make Helena uncomfortable was intruding beyond her boundaries and force her to engage in longer stretches of eye contact, made worse by the sensitive topic. But you suffer the same things he does. I do, Helena said. Though Amond doesn't see it so. He feels abandoned. You didn't have much choice in this. Once King Viserys ordered Helena to move to Dragonstone, what was she supposed to do? Amond knew that better than Harriel did. It's unfair to put that on you. Harriel, this is not merely about the move. Helena sighed. I can fly home easily enough, and my brothers can fly here. It's not that. You know how Amond feels about my betrothed. He's not well pleased. He's not pleased about any of this. No, Amond wouldn't be pleased, no. Because he thought Jacaerys was illegitimate, and seeing his sister marry a bastard would trigger both religious and personal discontent. Helena's move to Dragonstone couldn't have come at a worse time for her mother's family, and it couldn't have been better for Rhaenyra. Harriel knew why Helena was here. Of course she did. Lucerys had been disinherited. The rumors of bastards were swarming once more, and Helena was swooping in to make Jace look less strong and more of a Valyrian. It was Rhaenyra's strategy, yet so very tactless towards her younger siblings. She seemed quite uncaring to what would happen when Aegon woke up and he found his little sister had left him while he was on a sickbed, without a goodbye. And what if he died? Then she'd have stolen the last days Helena could have spent with her brother. Harriel didn't want Helena to know how uncaring they were about Aegon here. No one was stupid enough to say it aloud, but Harriel was still left with the insidious impression several of the inhabitants of the Dragonstone thought Prince Aegon's fall a good thing. Like with Rhaenyra, the only time she expressed concern for Aegon was when she worried about how her father was faring, sick as he was and now strained with the burden of an injured child. Whenever the talk was about Aegon himself though, her concern took a different shape. It wasn't something Rhaenyra showed when speaking of Aegon himself. No. It was whenever Lucerys came up that Harriel noticed the inconsistency. How Rhaenyra's situation would have been worse if Aegon had been healthy and fine, because then all the attention would have remained on the scandal surrounding Lucerys, the disinherited son of the heir to the throne. As always, it seemed politics was far more important than the welfare of their family. Since Helena was a Targaryen herself, perhaps she expected it, but on the off chance she didn't, Harriel would still prefer it if she never found out. As Helena had looked her fill of Hagrid's coat of arms a while ago, Harriel picked up her notebook from the table and pocketed it again. As her hand slid inside the roomy pocket, something cool and hard grazed her skin. Her fingers closed around it reflexively, as it had done so many times this last week, and she pulled Hagrid's compass out. With a press of her thumb over the locking mechanism, the compass lid clicked ajar, and with a flick opened wide. Harriel peered down at the rotating star and arrow within. It read the same coordinates she'd seen for the last few days, and impatience grew in her chest. Tomorrow, Harriel thought. There won't be any visits to Cracklaw, princesses or Septimega to push this back any further. Is that the device? Helena asked. Hagrid's device, the one his coat of arms is drawn from. A navigator compass, was it? She said the tool's name awkwardly. Westeros had telescopes to gaze at stars called Mirish Eye, but as far as Harriel had figured from their puzzled reactions to the muggle-looking device, they didn't have compasses. Hagrid's navigator compass lay open in her lap, the arrow pointing unmoving towards the southwestern horizon. Who is the arrow pointing towards now? Helena asked. When she'd first put a dogtooth inside, the compass kept pointing at Fang's corpse. After Fang's body was burned on the beach and his ashes lay to rest, Harriel had thought to try again though, and after a lot of confused spinning, the arrow was left pointing in a very different direction than Fang's urn.
Ariel had yet to follow the signal to its end, but regardless, she had a good guess where the arrow needle would lead her. To King's Landing. She did not say that though. Towards something I mean to find. Which is? Helena pressed. Ariel shrugged, turning her head out the window, hoping Helena would take the hint and let it go. She wanted to do this herself, and if Helena blabbed about her plans, she wouldn't get the chance to. You won't tell your princess? Don't phrase it like that. Ariel gave a small smile, copying the shy and kind smile of the most unassuming and innocent-looking girl she'd ever met, which was Helena herself. Think of it more as a treasure hunt. I may find spoils of great value which I might get to present before my princess, and I don't want to ruin a surprise. Helena snorted, then covered her mouth so fast her hand made a slapping sound as it covered her lips. Her pale cheeks turned a rosy pink shade. After all, princesses did not snort. Ariel could do naught else but snort too, louder and ruder than what Helena had done, and then burst into giggles. She wasn't sure why it was so funny, but Helena's moment had broken the budding tension between them. Their laughter calmed, and Helena still wore her amused smile when she said, Ariel? The princess leaned forwards, for once getting into Ariel's personal space. Her eyes were locked on her own, yet a distant gleam in Helena's gaze made Ariel uncertain if the princess could see at all. You will not go to the river unaccompanied, Helena told her, and it was neither a suggestion nor a request. An order. Ariel arched a brow. To what river? When you're chasing Fang's killer around King's Landing, you will not go wander the streets alone. This time around, Ariel was the one to look away. How had Helena known? Did she know Ariel so well she'd guessed? Or did she just know? If not for your safety, then do it to succeed, the princess insisted quietly. Why would I need to venture into the city? Ariel asked. Fang had been taken from the castle and then imprisoned in another highly protected part of the castle. Someone with that sort of access didn't seem likely to live in the city. That's what I see. You see it? Ariel arched a brow, smiling. You wouldn't happen to have seen the street name too, would you? No, Helena chuckled. Only fireflies. So, you want me to bring a guard just in case? Ariel hadn't thought to, and she didn't really want to, but she took a moment to consider it anyway. It wouldn't be the worst to ask Sir Carl to join her. He was a commoner raised to knighthood, now in honored service to the princess's own household, but he wouldn't have forgotten where he came from. If it became necessary to walk through the street itself, Ariel would be hopelessly lost. She didn't know the streets well, but Sir Carl had lived there a few years ago, and the knight knew how to blend in. They had that last part in common. Then again, if she could just go alone, nothing camouflaged her better than her invisibility cloak. Helena didn't know of her father's cloak though, and she was only trying to look out for her. Helena's eyelids fluttered repeatedly, as if she was blinking away dust. She leaned back, and her gaze flittered off Ariel towards the window. When she spoke, it was softer than the previous command. You may be left alone if you bring someone who can guard your back by another means but magic. You'd be wiser to bring a knife than a wand. If not, your sorcery draws attention, and your movements will become known. The princess pursed her lips. Bring my brother. Put him to use and get him out of that castle. You could do with some fresh air. Ariel blinked. For one, calling the sewage stench of King's Landing fresh air was a stretch. For another, Aemond was 14. What protection could he offer without vermivore? I'd think Aemond has gotten more than enough fresh air during his flight to Old Town and back. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Helena muttered under her breath, her tone distinctly irked. Helena didn't have much anger in her, so what the hell had Aemond said which left her upset days later? I intended to follow the compass to its source without drawing attention. I could do that alone, and though I could do with a guide to navigate the streets, I'm not sure your brother is suitable for such. Ariel didn't know how to get out of this. If she outright disagreed, would Helena tell Rhaenyra what Ariel was trying to do? If the Scepter found out she planned to search for dog murderers and traitors, she'd be locked in a room for weeks. I mean, if you think Prince Aemond of House Targaryen draws less attention from the citizens than a summoning spell, then you're mistaken, Helena. Maybe, but if you find what you seek, what will you do then? Helena asked. You hold no authority in King's Landing, but my brother does. Still, Ariel struggled to picture it. Aemond was very posh. It's true he could enjoy exploring secret passages, and there wasn't a dragon he wouldn't mind breaking a rule over, not to mention how he loved flying. But he was also the sort of goody two-shoes who thought eavesdropping on a council meeting was wrong. She couldn't predict how he'd react to this. Ariel could see it going both ways. Yet if sneaking around within his own home castle was beneath him, how would he react if Ariel suggested sneaking around the city? I still think it'd do more harm than good. The silver hair and purple eyes, Aemond is too recognizable in a city where nearly no one has Valyrian traits, Ariel said. Then remembered another issue when accompanying royals as they went for a walk down a city street. Also, his protection entourage of gold cloaks wouldn't be very discreet either.